Yes, sir. This is Theology in the Dirt. We're trying to practice our theology in the public square of our homes, our city, and our world. Man, you can get sermon notes, links to the rest of the podcasts, and other things like that at theologyinthedirt.com. My name is Mitchell Jolly.
And I'm Chris Hayes.
Yo, man, what is good?
Well, Chick-fil-A is good, right? I think you would agree with that, wouldn't you?
By all means, man.
Well, Chick-fil-A is reportedly in plans to launch their own streaming service. Not a joke.
Are you serious?
I'm 100% serious.
Can we get ESPN and Bally Sports and everything Braves Falcons?
You would think they would as a sponsor of the Braves, maybe so, but they're in contact. They're working on acquiring streaming rights currently. They've already have a planned family-friendly game show in the works for 10 episodes. They plan to produce both scripted and unscripted content, with unscripted episodes having a budget of around $400,000 per episode. Brian Gibson has been hired to lead programming for Chick-fil-A Plus and is already in talks with several producers. He worked on shows like History's Top Gear and Fox's X Factor.
Really?
So he has that kind of experience on like reality type unscripted shows. But it seems like the focus of the service will be family-friendly programming, particularly like reality type unscripted shows and movies. Well, the movies won't be unscripted, but just kind of family-friendly content. Wow. Some believe it may launch later this year. I don't know if Chick-fil-A has confirmed any dates or specifics of it yet, but not that I really need any more streaming networks, but I would test that out. I mean, most of the things they do turn out well. Yeah. I don't know if this means we're going to see a whole bunch of like Facing the Giants and things like that, but I imagine we'll see some of those types of programming, but also like not just Christian content, but just more family-friendly type game shows. And one of the companies they're partnering with created NBC's The Wall. I don't know if you've seen that show. It's pretty cool. It's like trivia with like money, and then like you drop these balls from different places so you can win or lose it. Okay, cool. It's pretty interesting. And then there was the 13 Reasons Why that Netflix did. That the company also did that as supposedly in talks with Chick-fil-A. So we'll see. I just found it fascinating. Yeah. I don't necessarily know if it's going to be good or not, but but more and more companies are kind of diving into different endeavors, and that's cool, man. Makes sense. So we'll see. Yeah.
Man, what's good is college football is definitely back. Georgia's throttling of Clemson. Depends if you're a Clemson or a Clemson person. Pronounced both ways, depending on where you're from. But it's nice to see Georgia throttle Clemson. And then that's fun. It just means it's back and it's cool outside. Like we've got our early this may be false fall number 2. And we may have one more snap of heat, but definitely we're on the downslope of summer heading into fall, which college football, the starting of the NFL, the winding down of the MLB season is awesome. But it also really gets me excited because Survivor comes back this month, toward the end of the month. So Survivor will be back on. So 2 of my favorite things in the world is Survivor and Georgia football, and that's a lot of fun. So, man, it's good stuff happening here in the fall.
It's going to be, what, season 48 or 49? Because I know they're already playing for 50.
48.
So, yeah, it's going to be hard to get through 48 and 49 because I think everybody's waiting on 50.
They're waiting on 50, I know. I listen, man, we should probably do an episode on The Office and on Survivor. Yeah. But I love Survivor, but I'm a little bit critical of the shortened season, like the shortened time they're there. It's 26 days now as opposed to like 39. And look, it's still intense, but they also made it harder. Like they took away food, and so I mean it's tough. It's still tough. And the game has evolved to the point that 26 days on Survivor is still pretty brutal. But I still can love
also
Survivor.
Kind of gone away from some of the more villainous type personalities and things too, trying to get. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of, I don't want to say it's gone woke. I don't think that's gone there yet, but there's definitely been some changes. Yeah. Intentional changes to kind of.
Come on in, guys. Come on in.
Yeah, we can't say guys because.
I almost said something not nice. I forgot we're being recorded. But, dude, we've watched every season of Survivor since, like, Jennifer and I were just married, and we were in Fort Worth, Texas in seminary, and we're watching Survivor, man. And I've seen every season, and I freaking love it. Dude, if I ever got on Survivor, and I'm, like, legit thinking about, like, putting in a like audition tape. I think it'd be fun. But I'd be cutthroat. I would probably be viewed a villain because at least in my estimation, like I'm not gonna like I'm.
Well, there's villains who are villains because they're just bad people and jerks to everybody and treat people like crap, or there's villains who are just playing the game and making relationships and then cutting those people off. Yeah. So
I'm going to play it like I play Monopoly or other board games. My goal is to win. It's a game. It's not real life.
Yeah.
And as a result, I'm going to do absolutely everything within my power to outwit, outplay, and outlast. And that includes I will take from them. You can call it stealing if you want to. I will lie to them. I will cutthroat. I will do whatever I have to do to get there. And jury time, I'm going to go on the offensive. I'm like, yeah, I beat you, and I beat you. Deal with it. Yes, I lied to you, and I won. I'm sitting here. You're not. Vote for me or not. Either way. Dude, I would be awesome. Because it's not me.
Yeah.
I get to go in and play this character.
That'd be fun. If you have the right social skills and are good enough physically, you can do really well.
I think so.
As long as you don't want to stand out too much early on. But
yeah, you got to reserve that for you got to make the merge.
Yeah.
Once you make
unless you just get there's always one tribe that seems to just have all the terrible luck. If you can avoid that tribe or survive that tribe, then you can do all right. But
that's right. Well, that was longer, what's good, but that's a lot of fun. It's time though to shake and bake.
Shake and bake.
Shake and bake. Shake and then bake. Shake and bake.
Shake and bake.
It's shake and bake time. Shake and bake, buddy. Shake it before you bake it.
Absolutely, man. Well, today, I know it's the election cycle, and I know you're so sick of this, but man, as things ramp up and we move toward the 2024 presidential election, man, there's just lots of stuff happening. And so what we want to talk about today is ask the question, what's at stake in the 2024 election? Because so much has happened. It's such an intriguing time historically, but also I continue to personally have questions, and I hear this from people. It's a legitimate question, a conundrum. What in the world do I do? What am I supposed to do? Because the bottom line is there's no clean option for us. And it leaves us in this gray space of I'm not sure what to do. And depending on what you see on Twitter or Facebook, it is easy to get yanked around with good logic in a couple of directions. And I want to say straight up here, I don't think a few of those options are wrong or evil. And I don't want anybody to feel like we are compelling them to do one thing over another. But I do want people to be informed with some critical thinking and some logical application of some things to make the best decision they possibly can to live with their conscience. And that's kind of, I think for me, the end result here is that you don't come out of this election after it's over going, dang it, I wish I had done. But at least you can sit with yourself and know, man, I did the best I could do as a follower of Jesus Christ in the public square.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. It's a thin line between trying to present truth objectively as possible, but in some ways not objectively from what the world would call objective. Yeah. But from a biblical lens. Yeah. But our goal is not to manipulate. But I feel like the hard part is, and maybe maybe what we should say here is the fact that there's so much effort to manipulate you at every twist and turn. Yeah, that's right. That is not our goal.
That's right. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, our goal is not to manipulate, particularly because this podcast is, our primary audience is our church. We want to have spoken media options for people to think through things that we can't do on a Sunday morning or on some kind of Wednesday class. Like we just different in the amount of time we have to put the appropriate things in front of our folks, because the bottom line is the world is full of information. Everything is always teaching. As I say, nothing never teaches. And so our folks are bombarded with information constantly. We want to be hopefully a ballast in that to be able to reset back to a place where we can make good decisions as a fellowship. Right. And so we don't want to put guilt on anybody. We just want you to be informed and so that you can make good decisions, and hopefully we think critically enough and analytically enough to be a help. And so what's at stake here? So I want to lead us off by, number one, recognizing that on this ticket, there are options. So I've got 6 options here, okay? The first one is you can vote for Harris Waltz. Number 2, you can not vote. You can choose to just not vote in the election. Number 3, you could vote for Jill Stein, who's the Green Party candidate who's on the ballot. Number 4, you could vote for Chase Oliver, who's the Libertarian Party on the ballot. You can write in a vote, or you can vote Trump Vance.
Well, can I add
yes.
One more?
Yeah.
Because RFK is still on the ballot
That's
in
right.
a lot of states. Not every state.
Yeah.
But so for our listeners, depending on where you're located, that may or may not be an option. But I think you can still write him in. So that still counts, I guess.
You can still write him in, but he is on – Michigan refuses to take him off the ballot, right? And so some people are saying, well, if Biden's not going to be on the ballot, or if Biden's not running, why don't you leave Biden on the ballot? Can't he get votes? Because he's the one who won the Democratic nomination. Shouldn't he be able to get votes?
Yeah.
And so there's so why is RFK remaining on the ballot when he is withdrawn from the election? It's a great question. And so you're right. That could be another option. RFK is on a ballot, and people still may cast. I would be willing to bet there will be a lot of people who will still vote for RFK, even though he is pulled out of the race and is backing Trump Vance.
Yeah.
And so you're right. That's a 7th option, right? It is legitimately there. So here's what I want to. So what's at stake in the 2024 election? Well, you're probably going to know where I'm going. People are going to know where I'm going here. But what I want to do is not take some things for granted, because one of the things that happens an awful lot in the news media, regardless of what you're listening to, well, you're probably not going to hear it in left-leaning media, but you're going to hear the term Marxist, Socialist, Communist an awful lot, particularly thrown at Harris and Waltz. And I want to affirm, I'm going to say flat out that I believe that the Harris-Waltz ticket has ideologically at a core Marxist leanings. And what I want to do, because if I'm going to throw that rock and I just threw it, I want to be able to make my point, okay? Not just throw that rock, because the reason I'm saying that is because that happens a lot. People just throw on, well, they're communists, they're just socialists, or they have Marxist leanings. And so I want to unpack a little bit of that, what that means, so that people can have a sense of where that's coming from. If people make that accusation, or as I just said, throw that rock, I want people to understand where that's coming from, because it's not just playing the game of trying to win an election. So, for instance, Marxism is a social, political, and economic ideology that produces communism and socialism. So communism, though, then emerges from socialist thought, but communism is more radical. And so, again, the Communist Manifesto, penned in 1848 by Karl Marx, Marx's vision then of communism is the final stage. So there's the socialism coming out of Marxism, and the final stage of that being communism. And so, but got to get down the rabbit hole of how they viewed that happening. And it's always socially, it has to be through the dialectic. And in the dialectic, it would be thesis, antithesis. And that would be, there's this standard, and we want to confront it. And the only way to get ourselves evolutionarily to that end of communism and the utopia of communism is to attack this standard of capitalism. And for them, it was always violence. And so that moving Marxism producing socialism, which produces communism. So some core principles there. Again, socialism being that initial outworking, emphasizes the reducing of inequalities through redistribution of wealth, and state as well as collective ownership of key industries. So socialism doesn't wipe out individual ownership of industries, but it begins to invade with centralized regulation and owning of industry, with the goal of wiping out any standard of inequality. That you get to maintain some private stuff, but with significant regulation and state intervention. Now, gosh, and this is where, as a Christian, you apply a Christian worldview. A capitalist, or a person, at least decent capitalism, and we would not advocate for capitalism being necessarily a standard of the kingdom of God.
Sure.
Free markets are a good, I would argue, in a fallen world, perhaps the better option economically. but there are problems in capitalism, and so. But what you have in that, though, is the need for regulation. We would say there should be no regulation. An example of that would be, if anybody loves podcasts, the one that's recently out is called Noble, Noble. And if you were alive in the early 2000s and were aware of the Marsh Crematory up in Lafayette, actually Noble, which is a community of Lafayette, Georgia, you will learn some crazy things about the need for regulation. There was no, at that time, I'm talking 2002, there was no regulation of the cremation industry, which is why that situation happened. And so we would all say regulation is good. But then when you listen to that and you learn the response to that, you're like, there is a place of too much regulation. And so there's a line to walk in regulation when it comes to understanding socialism, communism, and a free market. And so I recognize that's probably more than people want to process when it comes to elections, but these are the things, these are the ideologies that are sitting unseen in people's worldview. And what I said, the rock that I threw was that Harris Waltz has this ideology sitting in them. And so you can begin to see that in how they speak to. Even Harris made the statement about price controls. Price controls are at the core of Marxist ideology. That's not a free market. That is the intervention of an agency to set something that the market itself doesn't set. That, by definition, is at least socialism, and socialism comes out of Marxism. I mean, that's what Marx and Engels wrote. And so it is a play out of that playbook. So when I throw the rock that there is a Marxist ideology there, that's an example of it. Right? Does that make sense?
It would, yeah, because it's also in one of her famous quotes, she says, we have the ability to see what can be unburdened by what has been and then to make the possible actually happen. But particularly that unburdened by what has been comes straight out of the Communist Manifesto.
Yeah.
And there's some reason to understand this because Harris's father was a very, very Marxist-leaning economist, that taught at Stanford, and I think he was at UCal Berkeley as well. But so it's understandable why she would have this contempt for free market. Marxists said capitalism. They believe capitalism stands for social destruction, and so a lot of these words. But the interesting thing to me is that the attack for Harris and Waltz on Trump and almost all their ads is about his need for power control.
Right.
And lack of regulation, like he's going to abolish the Department of Education and all these other things, and it pointing him to as like this dictator to have control. So it's really interesting that they're pointing him having control while pushing such a strongly regulated everything. Yeah. Especially particularly when it comes to the economy.
Yeah. You remember as a kid when you used to when the person that you knew was not a good person always accused somebody good of doing something, and what they were accusing them of is the very thing they were. It's actually psychological projection. You project onto a person something about yourself, and that's exactly what's happening here. There's a projection onto this guy. I need to beat him, so I'm going to project onto him what I know everybody hates, which is what I am. And that's actually a psychosis. If it's done unconsciously. When it's done consciously, it's flat out manipulation. Yeah. And I'm not saying both sides aren't guilty of that, but in this instance, we're talking about an ideology that stands opposed to the very thing that our Constitution is built on. And so it's some other examples of, again, communism takes socialism to the nth degree. Communism, when it comes to some of those goals and principles, is completely for the obliteration of private property and the creation of a completely classless society. In other words, equal outcomes. And so when you start talking about equality, the question then becomes equality as far as humanity or equality in outcomes. And those are two very different things. In fact, you can make a biblical argument that whatever a man sows, that will he reap. That's a biblical concept. Well, that's not equal outcomes. In other words, the outcomes equal what I sow into something. Communism says no, completely equal outcomes, and the way that happens is by controlling those outcomes and distributing, which is why one of the reasons economically most Christians are opposed to a central bank digital currency is because if currency goes completely digital and is controlled by a central bank, then that central bank then can dictate how much money you can spend on protein. Chris, Brittany, Addison, all you can spend this month on protein is $100. And when you spent your $100, and the reason they know is because when you scan your little code at the grocery store on ground beef or steak or chicken or whatever, and you reach your $100 limit, you will no longer be able to. You may have plenty of money to spend on more protein, but you're done. And so that's centralized control. At least their smart economists have said the whole idea of a central, and Trump actually said he would never go for that, praise God. But the left is all for digital currency and a central bank dictating those things. That's how you get to equal outcomes, meaning every American citizen can only spend $100 on protein. So we all have equal access. And so that's an example of how communism takes socialism to an nth degree. Just give another quick example, and then I need to move on from this because we could spend a whole podcast on Marxism. I used to teach this stuff as worldview stuff, so it's it sits there in the back of my mind. I don't talk about it a lot, but it's there. Socialism generally supports democratic governance, but with a degree of state control that varies depending upon. Communism, however, is completely dictatorship, and the working class are the ones who rule society over those who are the job creators. So bourgeoisie versus the proletariat being the working class. All that in the dialectic leads to a one-party system with strict control over all political, economic, and social life. And so I'm going to stop there because those are just some examples to say. I said I'm going to throw this rock. I feel like the Harris-Waltz ticket has Marxist ideology, and we just gave a few examples. So that isn't without warrant.
Right.
All right. And so, but here's what we have. Like the reality is the Green Party and the Libertarian Party aren't going to win anything. They're there. Appreciate their effort to try to break up the two-party system. But they have their problems, and our goal isn't to unpack their problems. What we have is now the option of not voting, writing in a vote, or voting Trump-Vance. Here's what we have in front of us as Christians who are pro-life, and many of us may not be ashamed to put on our resume anti-abortion. Also, I'm an anti-abortion. I think there's an advocate. I think you can make the argument. We should make the argument that the execution of a child in the womb is a bad deal, which is why we did the whole episode on IVF. Because IVF basically is the extermination of image bearers that we have fertilized and frozen. That's a problem. And Trump has said some stupid things about IVF, including funding it with taxpayer dollars, which is ultimately funding the execution of image bearers, fertilized babies, and waiting for them in a frozen state to be implanted. That's a problem. And so I'm not for any of that. I'm not for our tax dollars going for it. In fact, the Hyde Amendment prevents the spending of taxpayer dollars, supposedly it's taxpayer dollars, for abortions. All right, so repealing of the Hyde Amendment would be a big problem for me. Yeah. All right, and it should be for any Christian. And so Trump has recently, in order to build a big unity party and the inclusion of RFK and Tulsi Gabbard and other Democrats into this big unity party in order to defeat Harris-Waltz, has begun to cave a little bit on the things that got him elected in 2016 when it comes to pro-life and with the IVF stuff. And then him initially saying that he would vote yes for the Amendment 4 in the Florida election. And dude, he got hammered, and he should have got hammered. I was participating in the hammering, and other people were. It's like, no, this is not what you said you were. And he totally backtracked that and was like, changed his mind. Because he's a Florida resident, which he should have changed his mind. But what it showed us is he's wishy-washy. And the truth is we all sort of knew, even though he was practically doing what he said he would do, that he's really not a pro-life candidate. He's truly a Democrat. I think he's completely a Democrat socially. Economically, he leans more conservative. That's a good thing. But the truth of the matter is, socially, he's a Democrat. And that's why Democrats are coming over, because they even recognize the far left progressive leanings of the Marxist ideology of Harris-Waltz. Those traditional Democrats are coming over to the Republican Party, which mixes what we would consider conservatism down to a liberalism. And that's a problem for a lot of us. But I think for me here, and I'm just going to get down to it, what's at stake here is it's a tragic decision, but it's still a decision we have to make, and that is, if Harris Waltz wins, that ideology historically has led to what is happening in Ireland right now. Last week, there was a professor who refused to advocate for the transgender garbage stuff that's happening, and he was arrested for his stance. Trends move from east to west. Historically, that's just the way it is. Europe, it comes to America. Sociologically, if one of these parties gets elected, we're not too far, I don't know how many years, but we're not too far down the road of that becoming our reality, where people like us who say, no, we're not going to murder babies, no, there are two sexes, male and female, could possibly face prosecution in a place that was established so that we had the freedom to say things like that. I truly believe that's what's at stake. And so because that's at stake, it won't matter if I'm pro-life. I'm going to jail. With one option, we at least have a seat at the table to prophetically speak truth to power. And to me, that's a clear option. It's a tragic decision. I wish that's the decision we didn't have to make, but nonetheless, it's a decision that's in front of us. We either go down the road of a Marxist ideology that is trying to be written into, superimposed on top of a constitution of a constitutional republic, or we preserve a constitutional republic and preserve a seat at the table to say, okay, now that we have freedom, no, when it comes to your stance on children, IVF, and a host of other things. But that's just the beginning. And so what we have is truly a tragic decision of where we don't get the privilege of voting a way we would like to vote, but we have, I think, a responsibility to vote in a manner that preserves for us a seat at the table to prophetically speak truth to power. Now, I recognize I have brothers and sisters and friends who would disagree with that. And I say that like it almost makes me emotional, because I'm no way trying to condemn a person who says they just refuse to vote. Do what the Lord tells you to do, and I'm not going to condemn that. I do think a choice, though, however, is clear, and that is, let's try to preserve something in a constitutional republic that is truly still an experiment on the world stage. As old as the world is and as old as governments are, we're just a couple hundred years old in trying this experiment of government. And it can be preserved. And unfortunately, that sometimes happens with guns. We have a sordid history in having to use awful means to preserve freedom. And so there are ways to avoid that if we can, and that is by voting and keeping some things preserved so that in 20 years we still have an option to continue to preserve it. And I recognize that's not satisfactory to some people, but it's where my mind is at. And so I want people to know that it's okay. I think one of those is not okay. I'm not a fan of the evangelicals for Harris Waltz. I think that's trash and garbage. I don't think there's any way you can align a Christian worldview with Marxist ideology. And I think it's very clear that they have that in their political, social, and economic DNA. Any of the other options, I think they're on the table. And I think one is better than the other, but I'm not going to condemn people who choose an option other than mine unless it's a Marxist ideology. So I'm going to stop there because I could go on and on about that stuff, but you have good thoughts and I need to stop.
Yeah, I mean, I think while we've said there's a lot of things at stake here, certainly I think the emphasis is on the life discussion and Trump's stance on abortion. I wrote down it's like a box of chocolates because you never know what you're going to get because he just continues to flip-flop around and move the meter where he stands. Yeah. And frankly, if we're being honest, he's just trying to measure how far he can go in an effort to try to sway some Democratic voters. Yeah. But I think he'll go back to being a little bit more pro-life if he gets elected as far as presidentially. Yeah. Because that's what he was before. I'm not saying he's going to go be full on. Right. But I think he's trying to tiptoe in those waters, and what he's probably doing is messing himself up. So back in 2022, he told some of his allies that the Supreme Court was preparing to overturn Roe v. Wade, that the move would hurt his party. And since that year, when Republicans underperformed expectations in the midterm elections, Trump has been privately emphatic with some of his advisors that his view on the abortion issue alone could kill their chances of victory in November. And certainly there's some truth in that. Yeah. That is, because this is a very divisive subject. And for most one topic or one agenda item voters, this one, it tends to be probably more so than others. It's usually either this or maybe the economy. But
and I would say this is it's a one issue deal for me unless there are other threats that threaten the luxury of being a one issue voter. Does that make sense? Like I'm all for one. Like I used to be a one issue voter. You're pro-life or you're not. If you're pro-life, you can get my vote. You're not going to get my vote. Unless there's an external existential threat, and I truly feel like this is an existential threat to a constitutional republic, Marxist ideology, and so it's made me expand my issues, you know. And so, like I said, I feel tragic and almost feel dirty saying it, but I think I'm trying to see this through the lens of there are a lot of things in play here that could prevent us from even having a voice to that. So yeah, it was one issue for me, and I think for a lot of people that is a trip up. My one issue isn't represented by anybody, and I agree it's not. However, there may be some more issues that we have to consider in order to preserve the luxury later of being a one-issue voter, if that makes sense.
It does. I even wrote down, I said, for Christians, at least for now, we no longer have a true pro-life candidate, which is not only sad but extremely scary.
Yeah.
And I don't know, because we can't really look another 4 years down the road because we don't know who's going to be running for the 2028 election. So it may be a while before we get one. It may be the next one. We don't know.
Yeah.
But certainly for right now, which is the only one that matters, there's not a clear one. And when we get to Harris, and you talked a little bit about this, I almost want to skim through some, but obviously she's about as far left on this issue as you can get. She's consistently supported abortion rights throughout her career. She's even more stronger on that side than even Biden was. As a senator, she co-sponsored legislation that would ban states from imposing restriction on abortion rights, and then voted against a bill that would ban abortions after 20 weeks of pregnancy. As VP, of course, she's outside of the unburdened quote. The next most common thing she says is about the Roe v. Wade decision, and then she talks a lot about that. She's become the White House's leading voice on that. It was just kind of awful how much she supports murdering babies.
Right.
And whether you're not a one-issue voter, it's really hard to support that.
And to be clear, they're not just exceptions. They are right up to birth abortion. That's where they are. Right up to birth abortion. And we've done episodes on that, but it's not just exceptions. It is right up to birth. And I'm going, holy cow.
Yeah, well, she also became the first sitting U.S. vice president to visit an abortion provider when she visited Planned Parenthood clinic in Minnesota earlier this year. So it's not just words, it's actions, it's history. It's if you go back to her legal days as an attorney, there's laundry list of efforts there. And so, we keep hearing that this is the most important election in history. Granted, I think you would say that about every election probably, but this one certainly seems to feel bigger. And I think certainly the pro-life, the anti-murder agenda is at stake big time. But I think there's also some other things here that are at stake. Certainly the existence of the middle class, being able to afford things, the border issue, funding foreign countries. There's a lot of other issues there. We've talked about this one too. The concerns over gender issues, trans rights, LGBTQ plus, and I think there's 17 other letters. It's like pi, never ending. But sorry, but there's many more social, cultural issues that are against created order. And I actually wrote this down too because we talked about the professor in Ireland yesterday, and frankly, I'm going to be honest. Like that's a bit scary because, like you said, those trends do move west, and if we continue towards that agenda, it's going to put us in a bind. And so I just it's a simple answer just to look at that and say, well, I'm never going to bend on that. They're just going to have to arrest me. But if we're being honest, life isn't that simple. Like I've got a family to take care of. I've got a daughter. My wife is a teacher. What happens if she won't use a kid's made up pronouns in class?
Right? Will
she get fired or arrested?
Yeah.
I think these are legitimate concerns, and what used to be kind of a laughable worst case scenario is now very, very, very real and very much potentially in play. Yeah. And so while I would love to say I'm never going to back off of my belief systems, I think that would be naive to just say that without
you got to think of the implications. Like the coach who was fired for praying, kneeling and praying with his football team. He was fired for that. Now, he won his court case, but why was he fired?
Right.
Like, it doesn't, for me, and I know this will hack some people off, I don't care if you're Muslim or Jew or Christian, and you choose, if you want to lay your prayer mat down, if you're a Muslim football coach and you lay fine, we're free, go for it. And I know that'll hack some Christians off, but we are free. Jesus is God, and he will correct that either in eternity or on the last day at judgment,
right.
or here, he's providential, I can trust him. I trust freedom, and I trust the Lord to rule over people's hearts and freedom. Don't arrest the man for it, right? Yeah. And so if we're arresting them for prayer, what's going to happen when your bride refuses to use a weird pronoun? Or are you going to take the arrest and the loss of income? And man, you got to start thinking, if people hadn't read The Insanity of God, you'd go read that book and look at the price those Russian Christians paid for refusing to bow.
Yeah.
Dude, it's real. That really happened, and it could happen here.
And if you think that's not coming to elementary school kids, 4th and 5th graders who think they're transgender and who have been coached and conditioned to be whoever they want to be, like, you're not keeping up with the time. Like,
it's already there.
It's already happening, and it's going to continue. And so, we kind of reached this point in our culture where tolerance, acceptance, and diversity are no longer opinions, but they're being forced into law, which I think is extremely dangerous and scary. And I think really what you were hitting on earlier, so the push for equality, when you're trying to shove things into equality, the only way to do that is to realize, number one, well, if there's not equality, then there's inequality.
Yeah.
Right. And so that means there's a lack of balance. And the only way to balance things is to suppress one side to try to bring up another side.
Yeah.
And we're seeing that now. We're seeing a strong push for that. We see that in, I may offend some people here, but like affirmative action, has been around since, for years now, for decades. You could argue affirmative action is more racist than anything else. And I'm not going to stand up here and be like, how dare they not care about the white people? That's not my point.
No.
But what I'm saying is when you start pushing programs and policies and procedures for the sheer focus of trying to make things equal in a world where nothing is meant to really work that way.
It's huge. And I think you have to distinguish between equality and equality of outcomes. It's written into our founding statements. Every man is created equal. They're endowed by God with certain inalienable rights, right? Life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. So there is equality because God made us equal. But equality of outcomes is a different animal. And that is something that cannot be governed without the control or manipulation of things unnecessarily and unnaturally. And for us, you just go to another country like where we've worked in Afghanistan. You got Pashtuns versus Hazaras. And if you do enough digging there, you will find the same problem there as you say them here because it's a human problem. So it doesn't have to be black, white, doesn't have to be whatever. It's Pashtun, Hazara, it's Hutu, Tutsi in Africa. And there is that reality that sin has wrecked mankind to the place that we push back against proper biblical equality. But what we have to be careful in fighting such things, and we should fight those things, is then making equality of outcome the same as the innate value of humans. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because you cannot guarantee equality of outcomes. You just can't. And so what should happen is not DEI. What should happen is everybody's got the same chance, and you better freaking earn it. You better come to the table degreed, skilled, appropriately credentialed, with some manner of portfolio that shows me on a scale of 10, you're a stinking 9. And I'm going to take the 9 over the 7. I don't care what color you are, what gender you are. I'm going to take the 9 over the 7 because the 9 is going to make my business better. And my better business allows me to hire more people, which creates more economy, which is better. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, totally.
And that means the 6s aren't going to get hired. That's not the same outcome. I don't have a job for a 6. I got a job for a 9. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. And so I think for people listening, equality is important, but equality of outcomes is not, and it's not guaranteed, nor is equality of outcomes required for a Christian worldview, because in eternity, there's not an equality of outcomes.
Right.
Not even in the eternal kingdom.
No,
we're not going to have the same outcomes.
We talked about that last episode of co-regency.
Lay up for yourselves treasure in heaven. Yeah. And there's going to be some things that I'm going to stand before the Lord, and he's going to burn up because they're wood, hay, straw. There's some things that will remain, and not all of us are going to have the same. Yeah. And I don't know, I don't have a framework for how the Lord does that in his economy, but the Bible's clear that the outcomes are not equal. Yeah. So anyway, I'm sorry I said that when you were talking that, I was like, that was burning in my soul.
But then coming back to our point on life is, well, you're preaching this. Every human is valuable, and I agree that the quality should be in the value of humans.
Yes, that's correct.
As image bearers, but you can't preach that and then go murder 100,000 babies because. That's right. And then, but that's the thing. That's what's happening is we're now we're not even caring about the quality of men and women anymore because we can't define that.
Right.
So what we do if we blur all the definitions and we blur all the parameters. Yeah. Then it's not equality, it's just jambalaya. Yeah. Like it's just a bunch of stuff you threw in.
That's right.
It's mystery
and all of that, the folks who are leaning Marxist, wiping out distinction by making men and women equal, and the whole Title IX mess that Walt Harris has done and allowing men to compete in women's sports, like how garbage, right? Mm-hmm. And that is that idea of wiping out distinction. And that just doesn't work. It's at its core Marxist ideology in play at the sociological level.
Yeah, I mean like that transgender. What's the swimmer's name? Drawing blank now.
Oh shoot, Leah
Thomas.
Leah Thomas.
Leah Thomas doesn't deserve any disrespect from me. Doesn't deserve any mistreatment from me. But at the same time, he or she, however you want to call it, also doesn't just get to do what they want either, based off of the guidelines that are very clearly set between men and women. And so it's not an issue of equality of outcomes because those shouldn't be equal.
That's right.
I mean, a gay person should have every right to a job as a straight person. And I got no problem with that.
No. If you're a 9,
and
I'm trying to hire and you're a 9 and you happen to be gay and all the straight people are 6s, I'm going to hire you as a 9 because you're going to make my business better. And I'll love you enough to tell you the truth.
Right.
But by God, if you're a 9 and you come and make my business better, we can work together. Yeah. That is equality.
Right.
And I have no problem as a Christian doing that.
No, especially if you're
If you're an atheist and you're a 9 out of 10, and I got a bunch of Sunday school loving, go to my church 7s, I'm probably hiring the 9. And I'll say to you, go work harder, be better, come up to the 9 level, and then make it hard for me. Right. Make me have to exercise my worldview more granularly. But, man, that's equality is going, no, I'm going to hire the 9, man. Yeah. This is what it is.
So I got a question for you. I know you like questions.
Fun.
I'm going to
probably got enough trouble already today, so let's go all the way in.
This one's more on the spiritual side.
Okay, that's good.
So we talk about what's at stake for the election, and because I see this post a lot. I want to set up my question so it kind of gives some background to why I'm asking it.
Sure.
We see a lot of people go, well, no matter what happens, Jesus is on the throne. God's good. It doesn't matter. I'll be fine. Well, I'll be fine. And I want to say, like, well, that's true. Like, that's the case. But I'm not sure that warrants a hands up, giving up approach that's indifferent to major problems happening in our country when we have an opportunity to make differences through elections, through speaking out. So my question is, how do we kind of toe that line between God's sovereignty, but also fighting for what's right?
That's good. It's funny, you asked that question, and I told you this morning when I came into the office, meeting with some of our younger elder candidates, guys going through training to be elders, wrestling through some things and good stuff, like working through things, and we're talking about baptism this week, and that's the church's act, and God's sovereignty and our responsibility are hand in glove. God's sovereignty at no point in time teaches a passivity on our part. God uses means, and he sovereignly uses means to do so. An example of that is Matthew 16, Matthew 18, where Jesus apostolically connects the apostles to the church. So the apostles' succession is the local church. And in that, he said, I've given you the keys of the kingdom so that whatever you bind on earth shall have already been bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth shall have already been loosed in heaven. Meaning, the language used there doesn't come clear in the NIV, and the ESV is only clear if you understand the word shall, and we don't use shall much anymore. The NASB and the CSB do it justice. But it's a perfect passive, and it's whatever you bind on earth shall have been bound in heaven, meaning what I bind up here is because it has been sovereignly bound already in the unseen realm. But I have to bind it. And the example in Matthew 18 is dealing with sin. If you don't bind it, it's unbound. You've loosed it. And so if the Lord has bound it and given us the authority to, with our labor, bind it, then by God, we better bind it. The loosing in Matthew 16 is through the preaching of the good news of the kingdom, Jesus building his church. I've loosed that for you and I've given it to you. Now go preach the gospel, unleash my good news in the world, and I will save it, right? But we have to go preach it. So therefore, Matthew 16, Matthew 18 are connected in the Great Commission, Matthew 28, where he says, go, make disciples of all nations and baptize them in the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit, and teach them to observe everything I've commanded you. Those three passages are connected. And so Jesus gives the Great Commission to the church, meaning we're not to sit back and go, well, he's sovereign. No, we are to make disciples, and we do it by going, baptizing, and teaching, meaning in going, baptizing, and teaching, we're binding and loosing. And so when it comes to decision making, this is one of the reasons I feel like doing nothing is an inferior choice. Well, God's sovereign. Well, yes, he is. But what if his sovereignty is executed by me making the very best decision I possibly can? And in that, him binding and or loosing. I can't get that out of my mind. Again, I can be wrong. I can be 100% wrong. And I'm going to trust that on the last day at the resurrection, this will either survive or it'll be destroyed. But I myself will be saved as one escaping through the flames. And so I feel like, and I hate to say the word feel, but I'm not going to say feel. I'm going to back up. Let me erase that off the board. I believe that under the sovereign hand of God, we have a decision to make. And I think that decision means we need to do something, not do nothing. And people will say, well, not voting is doing something. Okay, true. But it's still, it doesn't count toward one or the other. And again, I could be wrong. But the sovereignty of God means we need to act. And I feel like acting here is, and I don't think this is a lesser of two evils. I think that is an oversimplification of the choice. I think it is a tragic decision, but a decision that has to be made for the future preservation of the opportunity to fight evil.
Yeah, no, I agree. I appreciate you laying that out because that's kind of the responses I see typically. It's like it's either the we got to vote for this guy, we got to do this for the kingdom, and then or it's the he's in control, and again he is. Right. I think there's a component of faith and trust, if the side that we don't want to wins, I can trust that whatever is happening is under his sovereign control and rule. Yeah. But I think we need to look at it too from what does he want to do in me through this, and if I'm not voting and I'm not engaged at all, then what am I learning? Whereas it may be that the person I vote for may not win the election, but perhaps my biblical worldview has been sharpened. The way that I see the country that I'm in and the public square in which I'm called to serve, I see it differently. And now I'm more attuned to what's happening around me so that I can engage better for the kingdom. Yeah, that's good. And so it's not just simply... I say that to say I think we need to look at it not just as a win or lose election, like we look at a baseball game or a chess match. There's more to it. There's more at stake than just winning and losing. There's more at stake as to what happens with who wins or loses. Yeah. I just had this thought because, man, this came out earlier this morning in regard to
trying to stay out of the fray or not participating. In the Old Testament, there's a story in the book of Kings about Ahab and Jehoshaphat and an alliance between the northern and southern kingdom of Israel. And Ahab wants to go take a city in the north, Ramoth Gilead, and he wants Jehoshaphat to go with him. He's like, yeah, I'll go with you. And Jehoshaphat, he fears the Lord, he goes, you got any prophets that can kind of speak to us the word of the Lord? And he's like, yeah. So, so these guys are like, brings in all of his yes men, and they're like, go take it. And old Jehoshaphat's got enough wisdom to go, I think it's Jehoshaphat. It's not Hezekiah, it's Jehoshaphat. Why am I blanking all of a sudden? Somebody check me. I know this story, and I may be messing up. But he's like, you got somebody else, because I kind of feel like these cats aren't really telling us the truth. And he's like, yeah, there's just one guy, his name Micaiah, but he never says anything good about me. And he's like, bring him. Jehoshaphat's, bring him. But what's interesting is Micaiah didn't come. He's a prophet. And he's just like, I'm tired. I ain't saying it. Scoundrel, dadgummit, no. And so Ahab sends for him, and he comes, and the guys are telling him on the way, hey, man, everybody's saying go take the city. Just say what everybody else is saying. He's like, okay. So he says, hey, tell us what the Lord says. And, go take it. It's yours. And Ahab's like, come on, didn't I tell you to tell me the truth? And he's like, yeah, you did. You're going to lose. You're going to lose bad. It's really bad. And Ahab's looks at Jehoshaphat and goes, didn't I tell you? He never says anything good. So poor Micaiah's like in a lose-lose. There's nothing he can do right. And I feel like that's kind of where it is with the, like, I'm not going to participate, is it's like you try to stay out of the fray, but at some point you are going to be called on to make some kind of decision somewhere, somehow. And it's like, make it now, rather than being sucked in later to a place where he can stick you in a hole and give you meager rations of bread and water, which is what happened to Micaiah. And again, I'm not saying that's a command of the Lord for those who are saying that they're going to not vote, but I'm saying there's an example of a person who tried to stay out of the fray, got sucked into the fray because it was necessary to speak truth to power, and it did cost him. So if it's going to cost us, like, let it cost us now.
Yeah, totally sound like something Trump would say in there, like, they're my friend, but he never has anything good to say about me.
We're the best it's ever been. We're the best. We've got more votes than anybody in the history of the world.
We're going to destroy them. He tells me we're going to win it.
Yeah, we're going to win it. We're the best. The best ever been. Everybody loves us. But this guy doesn't love me. He doesn't love me. He's like Harris Waltz. Do I got the hand motions?
Yeah.
Is that good?
That's good. We better stop.
Yeah, we better stop. Hey, you got some Hayes takeaways?
I do have some Hayes takeaways for today.
I think my Trump impersonation
was pretty good. That was good. We should do some more videos of that.
We should do church announcements that way. No, we should not. Sorry. Hayes takeaways.
Ruined the whole podcast. Number one, and this goes to kind of what you were saying earlier. While I can't tell you what to do or force you to do anything, I do strongly encourage you to vote. I don't think the way is to bow out and just not cast a vote at all. Not with this much at stake. So even if you don't like either candidate or the two-party system, I'm probably there with you. Cast a vote. You could cast a vote for RFK or write in someone. I don't love that option, but at least go vote. Not because a candidate is some savior or going to make things better for Christians, but because it's our job to be relevant and connected to the public square. And this is one way, a big way we can do that.
That's good.
Number two, do the research. If you haven't done your research yet to what the candidates are fighting for and against, then take time and do that. You aren't going to get accurate information on political commercials or TV stations, nor social media. So do some more well-rounded research to know where candidates stand on the important issues to you and be informed. While we are commanded not to conform to the world, we better be informed on what's happening around us. Quick sidebar, I saw this on TikTok that apparently if you ask Alexa, like, why should I vote for Trump? She says, I'm not allowed to give any information about political candidates. But if you ask her, why should I vote for Harris? Then she goes and gives all these really good. So I have some homework. I'm going to try that when I get home with my Alexa and see. But that would not shock me.
No.
Sorry, sidebar there.
That's good.
And then number three, don't buy into the evil propaganda that is the pro-choice movement. Abortion is not about women's rights or health. It never has been and never will be. It's still murder. It's a big money industry. It's not about choice. They only use that to put a positive spin on what they are doing. So just don't believe the lies that are continually fed to you, and do not use a worldly perspective to find truth. Use a biblical worldview lens to bring things into focus.
Amen. That's good stuff, man. Well, hey, guys, we hope this has been helpful for you. We know this is a difficult election cycle, and we keep coming back to it because it raises lots of questions, and we want to make sure we're able to speak into it as best we can, give you some things to think about, maybe some things that challenge you, maybe some things that help you in your thinking, and maybe we need to be challenged. And so, man, if you have a thought you'd like to share with us, you can send it to theologyanddirt@gmail.com. If you have a topic you'd like us to talk about, please feel free to hit us up at the same email address, and we'll get that on the docket to talk about as well. You can share the podcast. You can give it a 5-star rating. Leave a comment on whatever platform you use, on the YouTubes or on the Spotify, all those good things. We appreciate it. And thank you for listening. Y'all have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you next time. Out.